is Srila Prabhupada, people often ask. At various times, he was known as a scholar, a philosopher, a cultural ambassador, a prolific author, a religious leader, a spiritual teacher, a social critic, and a holy man. He was not one of those modern entrepreneurial gurus who come to the West with slickly packaged, watered-down versions of Eastern spirituality, promising instant well-being to anyone who could spare $50. Srila Prabhupada was rather a true holy man, one who could be called an acharya, which means a spiritual master who teaches by example. After arriving in the United States in 1965 at the age of 69, Srila Prabhupada formed the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which developed into a worldwide spiritual community with hundreds of ashrams, schools, temples, and farms, and with thousands of dedicated disciples who made Hare Krishna a household word. To have achieved all this in only 12 years was remarkable. But before he passed away from this world in 1977, Srila Prabhupada had also written and published over 80 volumes of translation and commentary on the great spiritual classics of ancient India. His books were welcomed with great critical acclaim by the Western academic community and by scholars from India as well, and they became standard texts in almost every university and library around the world. Srila Prabhupada had also succeeded in transmitting the profound wisdom of the ancient Vedic culture in a form and style that was clearly understandable to the average modern man. He could somehow explain even the most difficult philosophical concepts to people who were totally unfamiliar with the complex Indian religious tradition. Srila Prabhupada circled the globe 11 times between 1966 and 1977, and everywhere he went, he taught the same basic truths, the fundamental principles of religion that constitute the cornerstone of spiritual understanding for everyone, no matter what their nationality or religion. Srila Prabhupada was, more than anything, a teacher, a professor emeritus of the science of self-realization. And he was the best kind of teacher because he always lived up to what he taught.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You founded the Hare Krishna movement some 7 years ago in 1967, did you not?
Yes.
In a capsule, what is the movement?
The movement is to awaken God consciousness of the human being. The human being is distinguished from the animals, that the animals cannot understand what is God.
Mm-hmm.
And if the human being also does not understand what is God, then he is animal.
I see. And so your movement is to bring about an understanding of God among human beings.
Yes.
And Hare Krishna means what?
Hare Krishna means addressing the energy of God. Hare means the energy of God, and Krishna means God.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You say that Hare Krishna consciousness pretty much takes the absolute truths from the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, and the Vedic.
Yeah, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Religion means to understand God.
I understand, but do you feel that in getting truths from various places like the Bible and the Quran and so forth, don't you run into conflicts at all or contradictions in those particular philosophies?
No, I don't find any conflict because the ultimate goal is God. So you have to understand God and try to love Him. So you can go through any religious process. If the goal is attained, that you understand what is God, and you try to love Him, then your life is perfect.
Why do we see so many of your followers chanting almost all the time?
Chanting means to keep association with God always.
So you have to audibly chant Hare Krishna?
Yes. This is transcendental vibration. Just like a radio message, if you keep contact with the radio message, then you know everything what is going on outside. Similarly, this transcendental sound, Hare Krishna, if you chant, then you keep connection with God directly.
Thank you very much, Your Divine Grace. It's been our privilege to talk with you and to meet you.
Thank you.
And hope that we can see you again when you return.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
We'll be back with more news in just a moment.
So if you are theologians, then you must know what is God and abide by God. What do you think, Dr. Judah?
Pardon?
What do you think this proposition?
Yes, well, I think you're quite right. I think that it is certainly in our day and age, many of us don't really know God.
Then he's not theologist. He's theosophic.
We know about God, but we do not know God. I would agree.
That is theosophy. Theosophy is they're thinking there is something superior. But who is that superior? They're searching. The same thing. A boy, he knows I have a father. But who is my father? I don't know. But that you have to ask his mother. Alone he cannot understand. So our proposition is that if you do not know God, and here is God, Krishna, why don't you accept it? You do not know, first of all. And if I present here is God, then why don't you accept it? What is the answer? We are presenting God, here is God. And big acharyas have accepted. Ramanujarya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, Lord Chaitanya, in our disciplic succession, my Guru Maharaj, and I am preaching, he is God. I am not presenting a God whimsical. I am presenting a God who is recognized. So why don't you accept? What is the difficulty?
I suppose one of the difficulties for certainly many in the older generation is that we follow certain patterns of life, and
And we are not serious about God.
and it is difficult to change. This is the great problem.
Therefore Krishna said, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sarva. You have to give up. So if you are not prepared to give up, then you cannot accept God.
I think you're being a little unfair to Dr. Crossley. I think what you say is true, that it's the most important thing we can do is to seek and know God. But I don't think it's right to say that it's a bad thing to study how other people or how man has...
I don't say bad thing.
Yeah.
I say if you are serious about God, now here is God.
That's what a university in part is for, to study about how people have thought on different matters.
I would say if you are seeking after something, if you get that something, why don't you accept?
Do you believe that Christ said that Krishna was his father?
The name may be different. It's like in our country we say this flower something, we say something from. But subject matter must be the same. Name is not. You can say any different as you understand. But God is one. God cannot be two. You may give him different names. That is different. But God is one. God cannot be two. You pay tax to the government, and the tax is distributed in so many departments. So it is not your business to go every department and pay tax. Pay to the treasury of the government, it will be distributed. This is intelligence. And if you say that why shall I pay to the treasury house? I shall pay this department, that department, that department, that department. You can go on. But it will never be sufficient. Neither complete. So you may love humanity, but because you do not love Krishna, therefore do not love the cows, you send them around. So your love will remain defective. It will never be complete. And if you love Krishna, then you love him, the small ant. He'll not interested him to kill him an ant. That is real love.
I agree with you that we love very badly and we slaughter the animals.
So badly love is not love.
But is the converse true? That we chant very well and that we can love Krishna even when we cannot love our fellow people?
You are chanting, you are also working. It is not that. You are simply sitting down and chanting. Because you are chanting, therefore you are loving everyone. That's a fact. These Hare Krishna chanters, they never agree to kill any animal, even a plant, because they know everything is part and parcel of God. Why unnecessarily one should be killed? That is love.
Love means never killing?
There are so many things. It is one of the items. Yes, that is one. Do you kill your own son? Why? Because you love him.
Would you explain the other side of it? The fact that, of course, the Bhagavad Gita has its setting on a battlefield in which Krishna enjoins Arjuna.
That killing and poor animal who is supplying milk, you are drinking milk, your mother, and you are killing. This killing and that killing is not the same thing. According to Vedic civilization, the cow is to be given special protection. Why? It is recommended for the cow. It does not say of other animals.
Srila Prabhupada, you are aware that they advanced the argument of mesmerization against chanting.
That's good. That's good. If you can mesmerize, that Dr. Judas admitted, that you can mesmerize the drug-addicted hippies and engage them in understanding Krishna, it's a great achievement.
Commercials.
Yes.
It's not mesmerization.
Whatever it may be. Dr. Judas has admitted. So, if mesmerization is for good, why not accept it? If it is for bad, then it is anything. If it is doing good, why not accept it? What do you think?
I don't know how to react. I think I agree with you.
If it is good, everything good should be accepted.
No problem. I keep wondering how you're so sure you know what good is, particularly when it comes to war. I would be a little more worried, I think, that...
What is that word?
Well, when you were telling that sometimes war is necessary, I should think that it's important to know how to decide when...
Well, necessary means you cannot expect in this material world all saintly persons. There are bad elements. So if a bad element comes to attack you, is it not your duty to fight and protect?
It just may be, though, that mine are the bad elements, and I keep thinking that other people are the bad elements.
No.
That's right.
Even God has got this discrimination. He says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha dushkritam. There are bad elements. In God's mind there is good element, bad element. So we are part and parcel of God. We must have also the same sentiment. You cannot avoid it.
The body is not divided.
Yeah.
He's saying that when we say everything is part of God, the body is an exception. He says the body then is an exception. The body is not part of God?
No, why? Body is also part.
Yes, the body is also part.
Yeah, that's it, I explained.
Maya Shakti.
Yes, it is another energy.
I see.
Inferior energy.
Inferior energy.
Everything is God's energy. The body is also God's energy. The best use of the body is God's energy should be utilized for God. Then it is body spiritualized. Body is also God's energy. And if it is engaged in God's service, then the body is no more bad bargain. It is a good bargain.
They also say that no one can ever be pure, that everyone is doomed to be a sinner.
That is Atmavat Mannate Jagat. That is the conditioned soul's qualification, that he is a fool, he thinks other fools. Everyone, he thinks he is like me. So that is nature. Atmavat Mannate Jagat. Everyone thinks others like himself. If he is a fool, he thinks all are. So these things are no argument. Nobody has seen God. How do you take the statistics? Can you say like that, any statistics that nobody has? Maybe you have not seen him or has seen God. That is quite possible because you have not scrutinizingly studied all the men of the world.
Yes.
Then how you can say nobody has seen? You have not seen the man who has seen him.
So the man
He will not admit his fault. He will accuse others. Nobody has seen that. Why? You may not have seen, but why you say nobody has seen? You have not seen that person who has seen God. Therefore you say like that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. child is changing his body to baby, the baby is changing his body to boy, and the boy is changing his body to youthhood, then in this way you are changing body. That you have got experience. You had a child's body, you remember. Or you had a boy's body, you remember. But the body is no longer existing. But you are existing. Therefore, the conclusion is that when this body will be no more fit for existing, we shall have to accept another body. This is called tatha dehantara prapti. So we have to change. That is nature's law. The soul is immortal. Na jayate na amriyate va kadachit, na hannate hannamane sarire. The soul is not finished. Simply a particular type of body being finished. No. The people do not know it. And because they are simply engaged in sinful activities, their brain has become so dull that they cannot understand this simple truth, that as you are changing body in this life, therefore you will change this body to another life. This is very simple truth. But at the advancement of material civilization, we have become so dull and rascal that we cannot understand. Sarvapadhi vinirmuktam tat parattena nirmalam rishikena rishikesa sevanam bhakti ruchyate. This bhakti means that we have to clear ourselves from the designation. What is that designation? Everyone is thinking, I am American, I am Indian, I am European, I am Australian, I am cat, I am dog, I am this, I am that, bodily. We have to cleanse this bodily conception of life, that I am not this body. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul. This you have to realize. Then there will be no distinction that here is an American, here is an Australian, here is a Hindu, here is a Muslim, here is a tree, here. No. Pandita samadarshina. Pandita means learned, one who knows things as they are. For them, vidya vinaya sampanne brahmane gavi hastini suniche cha sapake cha pandita samadarshina. A person very learned, vidya, and very gentle. Vidya means, educated means he is gentle, sober. He is not rogues and ruffian. That is vidya. That is the taste of education. He must be very educated, sober and silent. That is called gentleman. Therefore, this human form of life should be properly utilized. Not simply engaged in sense gratification like cats and dogs. That is not very responsible life. Responsible life is that I have got this improved form of life than the cats and dogs, and I have got more intelligence than the cats and dogs. If I simply utilize it for 4 bodily necessities of life. 4 bodily necessities of life means we require some eating. The cats, dogs, human beings, or High Court judge or anyone, they require some eating. They require sleeping, apartment. So that is, cats and dogs can sleep without apartment. But the sleeping required, that is fact. Eating required, that is fact. And sex life, that is also fact. And defense, that is also fact. But these things are common to the cats and dogs and man, human being. So what is the special feature of the human being? The special feature of the human being is that a human being can consider that I have got this nice American or Australian or Indian body, then what I am going to get next? What kind of body? That is utilized for human intelligence. A cat and dog cannot think like that. Therefore our business should be, now by the nature's way, I have come to this form of life, by evolutionary process. Now I have got good intelligence, how I shall utilize it? Vedashta sadvai ahameva vedam. The whole knowledge is meant for understanding God. That is the end of knowledge. By progressive knowledge, you can make progress, but unless you do not come to the point to understand what is God, then your knowledge is imperfect. That is called Vedanta. Athata Brahma Jigyasa. And that is explained in Narad Pancharatra. Sarvapadhi vinirmuktam tatparatena nirmanam. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktirishcha. When we become free from these artificial designations, American consciousness, Indian consciousness, African consciousness, there is no such thing. This is artificial. Even bird and beast, they also feel consciousness, pain and pleasure. Just like when there is scorching heat, you feel some pain. Is that American, Indian or African? Scorching heat is every feeling. If you say that I am feeling scorching heat American way, क्यों जी?
हाँ जी।
ऐसा हो सकता है?
नहीं हो सकता।
Simply these are artificial. And everything is depending on consciousness. Everything depending on consciousness. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the original standard consciousness. You are very fortunate that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to your country to teach you how you become free of all anxiety. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Everyone is full of anxiety, but everyone can be free from all the anxieties if he follows the path chalked out by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As people are followed in this age, the method also has been offered very simply. They have been recommended simply to chant the holy name of God. That's all.
Prabhupada acquires land in Bombay, India's most cosmopolitan city. Although he has only a hut for a temple, Prabhupada envisions an international cultural center. His ambition is to give as many people as possible access to the nectar of transcendental life, whether through philosophy, service, or spiritual food, so that everyone can become happy, hopeful, and peaceful. Dr. N.D. Desai, a leading Bombay industrialist, recalls.
From 1971 through 1977, I must have met Prabhupada many, many times. And each time I met Prabhupada, I would try to find fault with him. And even I would try to make him angry, or I once even tried to find out whether he was greedy. I just couldn't find any fault with him. In fact, you know, in matter of business life or daily life, we do try to see the weakness of the other person, and sometimes we try to, as a businessman, try to take advantage. But here was a person who just wouldn't become agitated. There was absolutely no lust in him. There was no greed in him. There was, I couldn't see a spot of jealousy in him. And then I realized, after 6 years, that he was a very empowered, divine person.
Gradually, Srila Prabhupada says, I am seeing all my dreams being fulfilled. In Bombay, a spacious marble temple, a theater, a restaurant, a library, and a twin-towered 7-story hotel. In Mayapur, the planned spiritual city develops.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
In Vrindavan, the popular Krishna Balaram Temple, an international guest house, and a secondary school. Prabhupada sees his society grow into a worldwide confederation with more than 100 temples, restaurants, institutes, schools, and farm communities. 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya predicted that one day the holy name of Krishna would be heard in every town and village of the world. By the mid-70s, Hare Krishna becomes a household word. In Srila Prabhupada's eyes, Krishna consciousness is not an armchair philosophy or a part-time religion. It is a way of life, a transcendental culture that can end man's political, economic, and social problems. To realize his vision, Srila Prabhupada circles the globe 14 times in 12 years, inspiring his followers and discussing Krishna consciousness with all interested persons. His door is open to everyone. To revive the Krishna conscious tradition in its full richness, Prabhupada envisions God-centered, self-sufficient farm communities based on the principle of plain living and high thinking. The first such community begins on 133 acres in the hills of West Virginia. Prabhupada calls it New Vrindavan, after Krishna's place of pastimes in India. In 1972, Srila Prabhupada begins a Krishna-conscious primary school system in Dallas, Texas.
Srila Prabhupada very practically introduced a primary school system to teach children self-realization along with regular studies. This means that the Gurukul system is unique in that the educators are themselves free of vices. We could hardly find an institution where the faculty members are free of loose sexual relationships, intoxication, smoking, although they may have good credentials academically. That would be rare to find. But in Krishna consciousness, the teacher must also be on a platform of pure devotional service, because the children are very impressionable and they'll learn whatever their educators are actually doing, not just what they're saying. So these were some of the principles that Srila Prabhupada introduced in Gurukula.
Srila Prabhupada gradually trains his disciples in the time-honored tradition of deity worship to help them advance spiritually. He explains, I have introduced this system of deity worship among the non-believers, the atheists. Krishna cannot be understood with our present senses, but by his kindness, he agrees to personally appear as the deity to accept our service. When we are attracted to the beautiful form of the deity, we will forget our attraction for material things. And as we serve the deity, we will develop pure love of God. Then our lives will be successful. While the Hare Krishna movement spreads worldwide, Srila Prabhupada wants to nurture its roots in India. He journeys to Mayapur, West Bengal, the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. It was Lord Chaitanya who inaugurated, 500 years ago, the congregational chanting of God's holy names. 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya predicted that one day the holy name of Krishna would be heard in every town and village of the world. By the mid-70s, Hare Krishna becomes a household word. As a child, Srila Prabhupada celebrated Rath Yatra near his home in Calcutta with his playmates. Years later, he is still celebrating the Rath Yatra festival, but now on the main streets of 20 large cities around the world, and with hundreds of thousands of disciples and guests.
imitate Americans. I am traveling all over the world. Everywhere I see they're trying to manufacture the skyscraper building, imitating your country. So, if you kindly become Krishna conscious and chant and dance in ecstasy, emotional love of God, the whole world will follow you and it will be Vaikuntha. There will be no more trouble. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama.
The thing that really inspired me the most about Srila Prabhupada was his complete dedication to his devotees. The thing that Prabhupada liked the best was to be with his disciples. It wasn't that he took on large amounts of disciples and then sat back and then just pushed them to do this and that and the other for himself. He did more for us than we ever did for him. And traveling with him personally, I got to see what a tremendous sacrifice he made for us. That even when he was ill, he would still preach. He would still be concerned. He would still be asking after how things were going in the society that he created, how were individual disciples doing. He always had time also to look to our personal needs. He was very concerned. Prabhupada wasn't aloof. All he really wanted was us to reciprocate the love that he gave to us. And if we reciprocated, he would give us more. So my personal experience with Srila Prabhupada was that I found in him a person that I could actually genuinely, fully give myself to.
When I first met the first Hare Krishnas, I can remember how surprised I was, and really I wondered what this meant. The costumes and the chanting and the shaved heads appeared a little strange, a little bizarre to me. But the more I came to know the movement, I came to find that there was a striking similarity in the essence of what they were teaching and saying, and in my understanding of the original core of Christianity. That is, living simply, not trying to accumulate worldly goods or profit, living with compassion toward all creatures, sharing, loving, and living joyfully. I am impressed with how much the teaching of one man in the spiritual tradition that he brought has impacted itself into the lives of so many people. So in my own view, his contribution is a very important one and will be a lasting one.